For the record, the greeting on the right is not typical in Israel. The typical morning greeting is Bokar Tov, good morning, and on Saturdays, their Sabbath, it would be Shabbat Shalom. May the blessings and peace of the Sabbath be with you. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests, today I want to share highlights of my trip to Israel. And through these highlights, I want to back up these titles. Maybe not so much the far right title, but I want to share what I've seen and give you a sense of what I felt during that time. One of the things that struck me was the range of history that you see in Israel. This is Tel Dan, which is in the far northern part of Israel, and it's called Abraham's Gate. Abraham probably didn't use the gate. It's probably before he was in Israel, but it dates from 1800 BC. And then the most recent event that we saw was the U.S. Embassy has moved now to Jerusalem. And we had to drive by and see that and took the picture of the plaque out front. So almost 4,000 years of history that we saw in this trip from 1800 BC to our present day. It makes what we see in America for the last 350 years seem just like a small piece of time. But not only is there history, there's also recent events that are being found throughout Israel, and here are two of them. As we were in the northern part of Israel, we drove by this tomb from the 1st century. This is a long way from Jerusalem, recently found, and they seem puzzled by who would be having a tomb of this type in Israel in the northern part from that time. What you see on the far right is what is now believed to be the actual Pool of Siloam, which is mentioned in the Gospel of John. And this has been recently found. In fact, there's been work in years to excavate this going out this way. So there's continually archaeological work being done. We drove by a site that was actually being dug out in their rectangles and didn't have a chance to stop there. But anytime there's new digging and any kind of relics are found, the Israeli government's immediately involved to find and see what the impact and importance and extent of it are. The complications come in two areas, and the first one's religion. And you can see here, this cross was placed on a pillar at Temple Mount, and this in the bottom right is a tombstone from a Jewish cemetery. The middle piece was interesting. We were at Nazareth, and within the past several years, the Roman Catholic Church has built a new worship center at Nazareth. After that time, there was work to start a mosque to honor a martyr in the Islam faith, which is what you're seeing here in the front. And as that work started, that was then brought into litigation and into court. So that work has stopped. And I have a feeling that this billboard was meant to educate people, be a little bit of a protest perhaps of what was going on in there, because apparently the work has been stopped for a while now. So the complications come with three religions all claiming the importance of the land and the city to them. That's one of the complications that we saw. The second complication affected us because it deals in politics, and it affected our tour guide. So in our tour, we had an Israeli tour guide and a Palestinian bus driver. Our tour guide was a retired Israeli Defense Force lieutenant colonel. Since Jericho and Bethlehem are still under Palestinian control to some degree, even though they are now part of Israel, Ari, our tour guide, could not go into Jericho because it was controlled by Palestinians. There was concern that he'd be abducted or kidnapped or captured. So the afternoon we went into Jericho, we literally stopped at a gas station on the side of the road and dropped Ari off. Met another tour guide in Jericho, and then when we were done in Jericho, picked Ari up off the side of the road, which was, I thought, very interesting. One thing they'd warned us about was make sure we had our passports with us at all times. And I thought, this is really puzzling. Why would I need to have my passport while I'm in Israel? So what we learned was, going into Jericho and Bethlehem, there are checkpoints, and these are run by the military, and they have the right to come onto any tour bus and start looking for passports for everybody on the bus. So I had a sleeve I hung around my neck to carry my passport with me throughout the whole trip. Again, unexpected complication of life in Israel. The terrain was stunning. This is in the desert. This is a dry waterfall or waterbed at Qumran where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. In fact, down here is Cave 4 where a large number of the scrolls are found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And what you see on the right is the fortress of Masada, which was a Jewish holdout for the Roman occupation in the first century. And I do admit I did climb the trail up to the top of Masada. So, I used to think the Badlands of South Dakota were desolate, and they are much more full of life than what we saw in the Judean desert. And water is important. This was taken at the Sea of Galilee, and they'd had a large rainfall the week before we were there. Apparently everything was much greener and much more alive than we usually see. And what we see on the right was from the tour bus as we were going toward the Dead Sea, seeing the wave action and shore action there as we were looking at the Dead Sea. And water continues to be a fought-over resource in Israel and in Jordan. So two things that I personally enjoyed while I was here. This church was at the pools of Bethsaida, and we decided in our group to sing in this building and hear the acoustics. In fact, the priest asked us where we were from, and we were saying Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska. And he said, "Oh, Midwesterners, you have the best voices." And the acoustics were amazing. What you see on the right is at Herod's Palace, Caesarea on the Mediterranean, and I was able to read scripture here and to be able to see the seating that they had at the Hippodrome. And I also learned what the difference between a Hippodrome and a Coliseum are. So a Hippodrome, you have seating that goes all the way down to ground level, kind of like our amphitheaters today. Coliseum, the first seat is 7 to 8 feet off the ground, because in case an animal gets out of control, you want a little safety. So in case, anyways, that's the difference between a Coliseum and an amphitheater Hippodrome. So, what did I tell you to do? What can I tell you to do? First of all, take your Toastmasters magazines when you go on trips. I believe we've submitted this one to the magazine. This one I hope would be better, but this is, of course, coming down from Masada, and I'm still pretty winded from that, so I probably look not the greatest. But anyway, take your magazine with you, take a picture. It makes a much better selfie than just you. And have it submitted. And we now know how to submit pictures of trips. My second recommendation is go. If you have the opportunity, go to Israel. If you have an opportunity to go in a tour group, even better. This is our group on the Mount of Olives looking toward Jerusalem. This is our tour guide, Ari, in the front. I feel honored to have been part of this group, and I've treasured the people that I've met on this group. And again, I can say, if you have an opportunity, go, enjoy it, learn from it. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.